All right, it's game time, as the video tells us. Love it. Very excited this week. We had a great week last week, and Andy Witchery was awesome. And this week, our guest should not disappoint either. Tyler James, he's the CEO of Influxer. And before we get into like a good Q&A here, Tyler, about Influxer and some of the ways to easily bring this on campus, and want to tell a little funny story about young little punk freshman, or no, you weren't even a freshman, I think. I don't remember, but true story though. Tyler James actually was a student athlete of mine when I was a compliance officer, and we continued the connection once I moved on, and once he left into the business world, and that connection has stayed strong to a point where we're now working together doing this wonderful Influxer business, and it's been an amazing friendship and working life. But yeah, it is a little weird to any of the compliance folks out there to one day look at the student athletes. I think we all joked about it. One day we're going to end up working for one of our student athletes. And yes, that is exactly what's happened here. So, but I love it. This is a phenomenal situation for me personally. If you know me, you know how happy I am. And, everything that we're doing here to make a difference in student athlete lives across the country, that's really what this is about. So Tyler James is a former football student athlete at Baylor University. He went into a couple different professional avenues of primarily commercial real estate. And he had this technology buzz. And he also, even during his time as a student athlete, was always examining NCAA rules, always coming into my office, looking at different rules, asking good questions, very intelligent questions, not just coming in and having a gripe session. And so when he talked to me about this idea he was having, it was really no surprise to me. And this has turned out so well. So Tyler James, I've told a little bit about you. In your own words, though, tell us a little bit about Influxer and how you came up with Influxer, and why are you so motivated and passionate about it?
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction, Keith. To answer your question, very, very long story short, just have always had a passion to start my own company and build something that's for the greater good of just the population and the world, and never knew what that was going to be. I've always, of course, had a love and passion for sports as well. And so one thing I knew I was always very intrigued by is mobile applications and the ease of how useful and easy they are, and how you can have them anywhere, on the road, for games, in between practices, film, handle a lot of the work that needs to be done being a student athlete all on your phone. And so I've always been intrigued by that sort of concept. And originally the concept of Influxer came about in 2020, just to what didn't have to do with student athletes, but for influencers and brands, to build a marketplace for them to connect on a mobile friendly application, which didn't exist at the time, still doesn't really exist. And so when NIL passed in 2021, it became very such a smooth transition to convert it to instead of influencers and brands, now student athletes and brands to get connected for NIL opportunities and deals. So, building an app from scratch in an industry that's brand new obviously has a ton of exciting challenges with a lot of the regulation that we see, but also such a large opportunity to create just an open platform and open marketplace for all student athletes. And so, that was the original concept of Influxer. wanted to be that solution and that platform to find NIL deals primarily centered around social media endorsements, as we know nowadays that NIL encompasses so much more than the social media and the influencer marketing deals. It is an opportunity to start building a personal brand. It's an opportunity to encourage entrepreneurship by these student athletes. It's an opportunity for them to seek and understand the financial um, services and help and education that is out there that's going to set them up for the real world. So it's such a great opportunity to do that. And as we're seeing now, social media isn't the only way to grow your personal brand or to grow and make income off your NIL. And so as we've learned over the past couple of years, this being into existence, merchandise has now become a big part of what we do at Influxer. And so at Influxer, we have set out to where we want to be a full service NIL solution where a student athlete can come to us for a marketplace, they can come to us for e-commerce, they can come to us for education. And as we build out more and more services that we'll be able to provide for these student athletes, on top of this, like career placement programs in the future, we want to be the go one stop shop for all NIL opportunities. So that's where we are now, and what's been the most, what's gained the most traction, what's the most exciting for a lot of these student athletes is the e-commerce part of our business, which is accessible for student athletes from any level in all sports, whether it's track, whether it's field hockey, skiing, bowling, Division One, Division Two, Division Three, JUCO. No matter what school you're at or what sport you play, there is untapped potential for you as a student athlete, even just selling some e-commerce merchandise through us. And that's just a way to get started. Then the social media endorsement deal or vice versa. The social media endorsement deals can be done before the e-commerce side, but just as whatever preferred for you as a student athlete. And so that's what we're out to do as a mission and provide as many opportunities for all student athletes. That is our end goal at the end of the day with Influxer.
We're going to play a little bit of Mythbusters here today. So, one of the myths that's out there, on the administrative side for a lot of universities is they need to pay a lot of money to have access to an NIL opportunity such as this, such as some of the things that we offer. You mentioned merch, so let's start there. We are offering a pretty long list of different types of merch items that's out there, and we seem to be adding new things all the time. I can barely keep up sometimes. So let's talk about merch just a little bit. What is the actual cost for a university, for an athletic department to bring Influxer on to do merch there?
Great question. So first of all, it's free for all student athletes. And second of all, it is also free for all universities, institutions, coaches. It's really what we could call a reverse NIL deal, where we're actually paying the school, we're paying the players, and we're paying the royalties back to the university. So it's a way for them to make income that doesn't require any startup costs. We do all the work, and we've really structured this way because of who we are as a team, former student athletes, former compliance officer. We know that in order to really provide as many NIL opportunities as possible, a lot of schools and a lot of players are going to be working with a budget. And so if we can't come up with a business model at Influxer, if we can't come up with a business model that is going to reach and be scalable for everyone, then that's what's the point of really trying. You already have agencies and you already have companies that look after just maybe the top 1% of these student athletes. And so we want to structure this to where you're a Division III school and don't have a ton of budget or any plan for NIL. We want to be that first catalyst for you because we are free. It doesn't cost you any money. We're paying royalties back to the school and the players, and 95% of the players we work with, we're their first NIL deal, and they're making money. So it's very exciting. We're very proud to be able to say that, and we have built a business model that allows us to do that, and it allows us to work with the mid-major programs or even the programs at the Division 1 schools like uh, women's soccer, softball. I mean, those two sports have been absolutely crushing it on sales. So, and a lot of them didn't have prior NIL opportunities as some of the football, men's basketball, and baseball programs typically have seen and have been making the headlines.
Let's bust another myth here. Influxer will only come in if there is a large segment of student athletes at a particular school, or or is that a myth? Or I mean, what's the truth?
That is That's a myth. If there's one student athlete from your school that wants to be a part of our program, and obviously anywhere between 300 to even north of 800 for one school, and how many student athletes they have, we want to work with them. Um, we don't need an entire team to sign up. We don't need an entire school to sign up. We really just want this to be an added resource for any student athlete that wants to join our program and our platform. And yeah, and then there's really no restrictions. Our contracts are non-compete, non-exclusive, so they can go explore other NIL opportunities without having to worry about it. They can even sign on with other merchandise companies. We want student athletes to have the ability to seek as many available NIL deals as they can.
Yeah. So let's talk about how popular this program has become. And as somebody behind the scenes, myself, as you are as well, and the number of other Influxer employees, we know we're working hard and we're grinding. And part of the reason is we launched our first school in January, and here we are just at the end of May. And from the end of December, starting with one university, to today, 5 months time, where how many universities are currently in the hopper?
Yeah, yeah. So very exciting. I mean, tremendous thank you to all of our team and everybody that supported us and put in good words for us. But I mean, obviously, you, Keith, have played an instrumental role in getting hundreds of and then dozens of schools signed on. Our business development team has been doing great with outreach. We have a software engineering team that's going to allow us to put on or bring on more student athletes and more universities, and then just recently brought on a head of merch to really scale this opportunity. But yeah, since January, with one license with Texas A&M Corpus Christi, who was really a tremendous school for us and have shown incredible support, and what really opened our eyes and what opened, I think, a lot of people's eyes in the NIL world to show that there is NIL opportunity for mid-major programs, and from track and field, from soccer, from softball, baseball, all these programs that really didn't matter. And so that was really eye opening for us. And so we wanted to replicate that model, and for all universities. And so up to date, we've are now over 50 licenses approved in just a matter of 5 months. Again, incredible job by our business development team, Steve and Ryan, Keith, and myself, Sean, everybody that we have on our team. There's so many schools to get this in front of and explain how we do things. So it's been very helpful, and it's been very surprising to see how many schools we've been able to successfully obtain a license for. And along that, we're now to over 1,000 student athletes that have signed on to our e-commerce platform from over 70 schools. I mean, even though we have 50 plus licenses right now, we have players signed on from schools that we are pending licenses or have just recently applied for their license, because there's, like I said earlier on the call, if there's a student athlete that wants to work with us, we want to go apply for that license and make that opportunity available, because we see it as a win-win. The co-licensed merch, having the school's name and logo on it, obviously builds their brand, builds more brand awareness for that university, and the student athletes, name and number. When those get sold, it's obviously just a combination of combining forces there. So it's we always, of course, we might be a little biased, but we see it as a no brainer and something that should be an opportunity for all student athletes if they so choose.
You know, I use that phrase often, no brainer, because it really is. There's nothing for your school to, there's no contract for the school to sign. And this really is brought on by student athlete interests. So one student athlete, maybe a group of student athletes, maybe one team brings up the interest and they get us involved. Of course, we're interested in working with them. We'll apply for the license and we'll kind of move forward. And then, of course, we always talk with the administration and to try to facilitate a good, working relationship. But it is interesting sometimes as I'm explaining what our model is to a lot of folks. Everybody always asks, "What's the catch? What's the catch? You guys are doing this for free. What's the catch?" There is no catch. Our model is based on a numbers game, and we see long-term sustainability by having happy customers, both student athletes and universities who want to utilize us and know that we're a good deal, offering probably the best profit margin in the country when it comes to student athletes and the NIL merchandise that they do. So that part's really cool, and it sells itself. And not everybody's ready to do NIL merch. I've definitely have, in talking with a lot of colleagues and stuff at schools, I've definitely noticed that. But they recognize, hey, this is a low risk situation, and it is. It truly is. So, in addition to being a low risk situation, being low risk might mean not that cool. But, and I'm the old guy in the dugout here. I rely on Tyler and the rest of the team to do cool stuff with graphics and automations and stuff like that. Um, when you first started dabbling with some of the social media graphics and some of the hype to hype up some of the player sales, what were you first envisioning when you're first putting together your first one? Like,
I guess, yeah, I was for social media purposes just envisioning, just a community, right? You see so many fan pages for different social media, or you see different fan pages on social media for different universities, right? I mean, the most obviously famous one can probably, or the most relatable one can probably be Barstool, right? And they have a page for that specific school. Well, with our niche and what we do, build something like that fans can get involved, they can follow. The student athletes can all support and have an NIL social media page for each university. This is a way for the student athletes to help promote it, which is ultimately going to lead to more sales for them, which in turn leads for more revenue for the university as well. Obviously, we're incentivized as Influxer to increase those sales as well, and then hire an intern from that school, whether it's a student athlete or somebody there for marketing, studying marketing or communications, journalism, whatever it may be. Let them run that social media account, create the content, and make it very school specific, and build a community around an NIL social media page that all the student athletes are following, that they can purchase their gear. And obviously, as we grow this, more NIL opportunities become available for businesses and these student athletes, and rolling out new merchandise for these players, keeping it all there. And obviously, we know the the generation that we're working with that's currently in college is big on social media. That's where they live, eat and play whenever they're not going through to school and going to practice and have their games. So it's a very useful tool, and it's also a way for us to communicate to customers, to fans, to brands and businesses that want to work with these student athletes. It's just a very centralized, specific to this school, and again, building niche communities and networks and a fan base from starting with this
well,
merchandise.
I think you've identified a few cool things along the way that I've really enjoyed watching. Things that I probably, I'd like to think I would have thought of, but I, there are things, such as a very unique, and I'm going to call it by the wrong name, but URL or IRL, um, and IRL and compliance world means an entirely different thing. But so students can take the web address for where their merch is at, put it in the bio, their social media page. They can easily tweet it out. There's little things like that. There's just a lot of little details that you paid attention to that have made this a very cool enterprise. But really, one of the things coming from my background being on college administration was this idea to hire interns at schools that we're pretty ongoing with, that we have a pretty good customer base going. And so, hiring a student athlete in particular is one thing that you've identified as important. Um, so, talk a little bit more about that and kind of what brought that on.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and I do want to touch on, you just mentioned, having a personalized link that the student athletes can post in their bio. That was obviously something we were very big and keen on from the beginning. Was each player having their own unique URL
Yeah.
that when people click on it, takes them directly to that page online, and they can, fans, friends, family can go purchase that merchandise and gear, and with royalties, majority of the profits going back to the student athlete. But to answer your question about the internship is, providing an opportunity for a student athlete to promote NIL to at their school. And obviously at Influxer, we don't have the bandwidth to have somebody on campus or in that certain college town to run around, create content, and push the sales. And who better to sell NIL than a current student athlete, and giving them that experience to, real world experience to do so, the platform to do so. And with our internship program, it's also commission based, so they're incentivized. That intern is incentivized to increase sales, bring in more opportunities for their teammates, other sports programs that are at that university, and because they're incentivized to do so through the commission, and building some real life skills through marketing, customer service, entrepreneurship, and building that platform and foundation, which is, like I was talking about earlier, NIL isn't just about making money. It's developing real life skills and setting these student athletes up for the future, because you are going to have, 99.9% don't go pro, these student athletes getting into the next phase of their life beyond college. And so we're not just looking at these student athletes as a way to monetize. It's just looking at them of, hey, let's set you up for years beyond college. And so that's where this internship is truly unique and special, and something we're excited to be rolling out at multiple universities, and everyone that has signed on
So
with us.
what's the total cost to the university for that?
$0 there. The student athlete actually makes more money, and they're incentivized to make more sales. And of course, the royalties go back to the school. We call it a win-win-win, because the school makes money, the student athlete makes money, and of course, Influxer makes money. So then we can go expand this opportunity to more universities and more student athletes in the coming years.
Awesome. So we're spreading out around the country right now. We're getting out. We're selling gear. We're also starting to do some education. Quite a few places. And wanted to ask, what's the tie-in between selling a shirt and education? You know, I'm not good with hand gestures, but if I was, that would be a great hand gesture for trying to fit those two odd pieces together. But you've somehow done that.
So, yeah, I mean, selling merchandise is a very broad term. Just selling merchandise, just by listening to it, it's a lot more than just, hey, Influx is going to do everything for you, and you're just going to see all these sales without having to do anything. Where our education is coming in is teaching these student athletes that, hey, you still are going to have to work a little bit on this. Social media promotions, sending the links out, getting this posted in your bio properly, how to send it to friends, how to post it on your Instagram story, how to get it on Twitter, how to take these URLs and these easy avenue to monetize and make more commission, more sales by getting in front of your friends, your family, fans in the way that is seen to be successful in the social media world. So that's a big part of our education. Another big part is, what do you do once you make the money? You got taxes, right? You have proper reporting that needs to be done. Potential, resources that we can provide on the financial literacy side, and getting you connected with attorneys or tax consultants, setting up an entity, and on top of that, the do's and don'ts, right? How, especially with international student athletes, which our program has been built around, and what we've been notorious for, and big reason why we wanted to work with international student athletes is because at Influxer we want to work with all student athletes. And so if we didn't include international student athletes, or figure out a way to provide an opportunity that makes sense for them and gets their compliance and their DSOs and their international office feeling comfortable, then how can we say that we're providing NIL
So
opportunities for all student
notorious in a
athletes?
good way. Popular.
Correct.
Yeah, popular is probably, yeah. No, you're 100% right.
Keep going on and on here, but that's really the big point of why the education is such an added benefit and resource, on top of what a school is probably already messaging. Just hearing it from another mouth, hearing it from a company like us, that this is all we do. We live it, breathe it. NIL, getting as much knowledge to these student athletes is only beneficial for everybody involved.
And so recently we've started to we start scheduling a lot of schools for in-person education, and that's something where campuses can have this beautiful face or come to their campus. So if you've noticed on any of these videos, I am constantly drinking coffee. So the only cost to getting me on your campus and is for the campuses out there that are that do have a number of students on our merchandising website, we are offering to send me out there for free. Um, well, I am going to ask for a couple cups of coffee while I'm there, keep the energy level up, and I just love the taste. So maybe not 100% free, but there's a little bit. All you do is cover the travel cost. We see this as a long-term relationship with the schools and the student athletes. So we want to make sure we're there in person. Should you desire that, and not just do something virtually and kind of phone it in, we'd like to be there in person. So that has been another big seller for us, just in terms of getting universities, you know, on the same page with us. Anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I'm very excited that we're rolling that out, and that's a really good point, Keith. That Keith obviously comes from 23 years of NCAA compliance experience, and of course, I'll have a couple stories to tell at the end of
Oh
this.
boy.
But from my years at Baylor with Keith, and want to ask him a couple questions. But no, you're it, absolutely right, and it all comes back to wanting to provide NIL education for the student athletes, the programs, the schools that can't typically afford what else is out there. The 5-figure price tags, and the $100,000 price tags for these consulting is just something that you're obviously not going to be able to um, work with a lot of the smaller schools and the smaller budgets, but there's still potential, and there's still NIL opportunity that is there at those smaller institutions, and not the Power Five. And this, of course, we love working with the Power Five too, and they're super exciting, and um, continue to roll out more and more of those programs. But again, it's about the sports and the student athletes that don't receive that attention, and so offering this education opportunity is again another win-win for everybody involved. Of course, allows someone with vast knowledge and vast experience in NCAA and NIL to come to your campus to speak to the student athletes, not just on the opportunities that we have at hand, but just overall NIL knowledge. And then, if the student athletes want to know more, of course, our team will make ourselves available. Um, and all the meanwhile, we of course want to build the relationship. We see this as a long-term game, and want to build relationships not just with some of the staff we may not know already, but also the student athletes, and put a name with a face and show that we're not just this company behind a camera. And of course, on the back end, just want to be able to, of course, make a profit and just cover our expenses, the travel costs that are incurred. Um, is all we're looking to do. That is our only goal. We're not trying to make tens of thousands and hundred thousands of dollars on in-person speaking engagements, but want to be able to do it where we're also not. Influxer as a company is not losing money, because we know our relationships with the university and our relationships with these student athletes is we're going to see, um, you know, a betterment for all parties involved by doing it this way, and enabling opportunities for the Division III to smaller programs to have an opportunity to bring NIL to their campus that hasn't existed before.
So let me hit on that last thing. Let's say a student athlete that is, watching this right now, or they're going to watch the recorded version, and they think, well, we don't have NIL merchandise on our campus yet. What if they had a chance to ask you, Tyler, the question, what's the best way for, one student athlete at a school that they might think nobody really cares about when it comes to NIL? What's the best way for that person to get involved and to be a leader to bring us to their school?
That's a great question. Being a former student athlete myself, student athletes have so much more power than they realize, and especially on a topic like this, where it's for the betterment of the rest of their team, the rest of their sports program. If you're a student athlete at one of these schools and want to bring, Keith, the rest of our team to your school and speak on this extra NIL knowledge and how to access these opportunities that people don't realize exist for these smaller universities, we're available to do so. And the best way to go about it is go talk to your coaches, go talk to your admin, your compliance staff, your academic advisor. Say you want to bring in NIL experts that, hey, I saw this company Influxer, Keith Miller, Tyler Janes, they said that they would come speak to us on NIL education, and all we'd have to do is just cover the travel costs for them. Some are obviously, depending on where you are, is just going to vary, but just cover the travel costs, and we'll make ourselves available for that time, and that's the best way to get us over there. Or if you'd like for us to, and of course, there's power in numbers, right? So you and several of your teammates all go in together and go talk to your coach, your academic advisor, your compliance officer in person. That's going to have a much better effect than just sending them a text or sending an email. Show them the link to this video, send them the link to this video, say, hey, I'm going to come by your office and talk about this. We want to bring these guys on campus. We want to see what more opportunities they might have and what education we can learn once we do get these opportunities. They're saying this type of stuff can exist for, student athletes like us that we didn't think was a possibility before. So that's one good way to go about it. What else do you recommend, Keith?
I think that's a great approach. I know, when I was sitting in the chair of being an administrator, if there was a student, even if there was just one student, it was my responsibility to check it out and to, the power right now is in the student athlete's hands. And so if one student came in, I need to check it out. But certainly if there was a group of students, a team that said, hey, we want to do something like this, and that's something definitely I want to, as an administrator, try to get my hands in and find out a little bit more, have a conversation, find out what exactly is at stake, and you know that's how I would see it if I. So I think this what you said makes a lot of sense, and I think the fact that our contracts are not exclusive, so students aren't bound in a contract that is going to restrict them from eternity, durations limited to college career. It's a low risk scenario, and as a compliance person sitting on campus, I always try to gauge, well, what's at stake here, what's the risk. And when there's very little risk, and there's no cost involved on either the student athlete's part or the university's part, it's hard. It would be hard to say no. And we do, one of the great things is we kick out the contracts, copies of the contracts to the compliance offices, and try to help out in every which way they would like to see things reported. Different schools have different ways they like to see things, but I'm a little nervous. I'm going to be honest, because you said you had questions for me, and I'm glad we got it to where we only got less than 10 minutes left in this conversation today. I can't even imagine what questions you got for me today.
So you were a compliance officer for 23 years, and a big part of pre-NIL compliance was making sure the student athletes were not getting compensated for their NIL and making them aware of all of the eligibility risks that come with it. And so now, after doing that for so long, over 2 decades, flipping over to the other side, one, what made you make that switch? And two, how has that transition been?
Wow. Yeah, that is a huge question. Yeah, spending a couple decades of telling people no, no, and trying to, say no in multiple different ways, even in different languages. I tried. You can't do that. Yeah, very difficult to make that switch. You know, I'm going to show the compliance nerd in me. 12511 was, kind of what you live and died for. There's also some other sub bylaws in there too. You throw in every once in a while. If compliance person's watching this, they're laughing. They're like, well, don't forget about the congratulatory advertisement. Oh no, I use that one to my advantage many, many times. There was a lot of different little nuances to this area. And as NIL started to come about, I immediately thought of, hundreds of situations in the past where a student athlete genuinely wanted to do something like pitching lessons or batting lessons, and they were prohibited from advertising those services during summer. Say even something as simple as Facebook, and say, hey, I'm coming home, my name is so and so. We'll use Steve McLean. He works here at Influxer. He pretended to be a baseball player at Baylor for a number of years. His batting average was sometimes his body weight, but let's say Steve wanted to do some batting lessons when he went home, and he went on his Facebook page, and he would the way he'd have to advertise is batting lessons, college student athlete, call this number. And that's pretty much where it was limited. Were there a lot of people violating that? I think so, but I think when NIL first started coming about, I immediately thought about those hundreds of situations that had naturally occurred, been questions I had received over the years. And so I thought, absolutely, we need to, have some changes in there, because, stuff like that just seemed like it was a no brainer. NIL has definitely gone on to have many other different types of, ramifications, different ways it looks. But yeah, it was definitely a different thing changing to the other side. And I notice as I talk to colleagues that are still in compliance offices, sometimes I feel like they're looking at me like I'm Darth Vader, or something, like that. But they're still good in me, just like in Darth Vader. Um, NIL is not bad. NIL done properly, done responsibly, is an absolutely critical thing. And I think, you know, I think we all got into this business to do something, and that's to make a difference in student athlete lives. Um, and in my mind, when I got into the business, that's what it was. I wanted to do it locally on a campus, regionally within a conference, and nationally within the association. And as NIL developed, as Influxer started to come into the picture for me, I saw this as an opportunity for me to help change and impact lives on a different scale. This wasn't a business decision. This was more of a decision of where do I go with my career to continue providing an impact in people's lives. And I thought this was an area that could use another voice, a logical voice of reason. And hopefully I provide it.
Awesome.
So,
It's been awesome having you on board, and all the expertise that you have has been a tremendous value add and huge benefit to Influxer. I'm so excited to see what all we accomplish over the next couple of years, and even 5 years, 10 years down the road. It's all moving so quickly, where we think NIL was 2 years ago to where it is now, and then another 2 years is just who knows. And just being adaptable and leaning on the expertise that you bring to the table, and the rest of our team has been great. It's been awesome and really exciting for these student athletes and these schools as well. We do have another question from our friends over at Real Friends in Football. Not sure if this came from Miles or Alex, but uh, Keith, they're asking, how important is it to have a good relationship with the family of the student athlete? I don't know if you want to take it. I have an answer in my
why don't you
head.
go? Then I'll go.
Cool. Got it. Yeah. So great question. So it is very important. I think what's more important than having a relationship, it can be, I guess, like a broad term, but what's even more important, or the most important, is making sure that the parents and the families feel comfortable with what the student athlete is going to be signing. A lot of these players and a lot of these student athletes do not have agents. Large majority of them don't, and don't have anybody giving them that proper guidance. And so that typically does come from their family and mentors, and most of the time it is directly their parents. So it is very important to have a good way of communicating that to the families. There's been several times we get emails from parents all the time, or we've even done several phone calls with parents all the time. So I think it's important to know that we are accessible in that regard. We have a merch sign up here in the top corner. Uh, Also has FAQs on there, and we labeled it as FAQs for student athletes, family members, customers. So a section for everybody. Go on our website and you can take a look at some of that there. But if you also have more questions, feel free to shoot us an email, merch@influxer.com, on something like this. And yeah, it is important, because a lot of these are their agents. A lot of the parents and families are their agents.
I think, as in the recruiting process, a lot of family members know, coach will come to the house or coach will show up at the fields, and you know the family is watching the coach, and they're wanting to know if this coach is going to take care of their family member, their student athlete. And in the same manner, if you're not familiar with the coaching world, coaches are also looking at the recruit and how they treat their family, because they want somebody that's going to treat them in the dugout or the bench the same way. you know I think it's an interesting thing, just getting into NIL, having started off NIL in the compliance role on a campus. There were scams out there. There were definitely some apparel scams that were some things. Um, so I think parents have a right to ask questions. I think they should ask questions. If it's a mom and pop type of situation where It's not an established, ongoing business that says, "Hey, we can do a bunch of NIL merch for you." Yeah, it could. That might be something to raise a red flag. Now, while Influxer is young, we are very well established. We are turning out great quality product. Our stuff is not coming on cheap materials. It is top notch materials, really cool graphics. Um, we're doing a lot of great stuff. And, as Tyler mentioned, we have our eye on, doing even more professional development for the student athletes that get involved with us. Um, so there's quite a bit happening here where we're not out to just take money. This is not a quick cash grab type of situation for us. This is a situation where we feel like we can really make a difference in your student athletes' lives. So I see we got another question here.
Yeah, I think we're over time here. Um, I do gotta jump off though. So, Keith, once again, thank you for all you do. This education series has been incredibly helpful, incredibly important. We're excited to put this all out into short form content here, and send the links out for everybody to come back and watch. And just super exciting times. Make sure everybody catches us at the NACTA conference. Um,
Yes.
Here, let's touch on that right before we leave.
Yeah, we will be at NACTA in Orlando, and we're very excited. We've got an all-star lineup of guests that will be joining a podcast. Um, we've got uh, we've got a number of different athletic directors, different compliance personnel. We got some really outstanding guests that you're going to want to pay attention to, especially if you're trying to get into the college athletics industry. Basically, we're going to highlight their past to how they got into to the positions they are and what advice they would have for you. So, all right, preview of next week. Next week we have Matt Banker. You may or may not know who Matt Banker. Matt Banker is one of those other great voices out there in the college athletics landscape. Also, a law school classmate of mine from way back in the day, and he is currently doing a lot of stuff with G1 Ticker. He's doing his own consulting thing. He is out there in a lot of different facets, and thought he would make for a great conversation next week. So you're not going to want to miss it. It should be a great one. So,
Awesome.
thanks everybody for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.